Tracy,
Hi,
good
how are
morning.
you?
Nice to see you.
All right, well, welcome everyone. My name is Steve Mormon, and on behalf of Bryan Kelsey, the Wealth Project, and the other group members, I'd like to thank you for coming out in the snow once again. And so, the rescheduled event from the snow out, and Wednesday's
Hey, nice to see you.
snow, today snow, see a reoccurring theme here, like Bryan seminars and snow. And thank you for coming out. Today, I wanted to ask you real quick, with a show of hands, who are real estate agents?
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And on
At
Wednesday,
our last
what we
event.
saw was, there was about 50-50 real estate agents, to others that are in the real estate business.
I said to him, imagine the word is a four-letter word.
It's a little bit different from what Bryan Kelsey's normal seminars are, or what they were in the past. And we're seeing now a need or a desire for others in the industry to be a part of Bryan's systems. And today, with the people that are here that are not real estate agents, we always think of the real estate market as the real estate agents are the engine of that train, that are the driving force. But all of us that are not real estate agents, we're on that train, and we're trying to keep that train going. Sometimes we have a referral fee about the real estate agent, which is kind of like putting coal on the fire. But for the most part, we're just riding that train. And what we're hearing is a need for people that are not real estate agents to assist with the train, trying to keep it running smoothly, whether that's oiling the wheels or maybe helping find a better path. And that's kind of what Bryan's systems are. It's helping that train run smoother, better, faster, even though we're not maybe necessarily the ones stoking the fire. So with that, just want to kind of give you a little bit of who and why we're all here. Wanted to also introduce Dan Lewis, who's an insurance agent, and maybe kind of a slightly different perspective of who is here and maybe not directly with getting referrals directly from real estate agents, but potentially loan officers, and how that being a part of the system is working for you.
Hello, I'm Dan Lewis with the insurance store around Chesterfield. I'm an insurance broker. I work quite a bit with real estate agents as well as mortgage officers in my daily work. Got introduced to Bryan maybe 4, 5, 6 months ago, and we've been working hand in hand ever since. It's been a great, great system. For years, I've been trying to come up with something that adds some extra value. In the past, it may have been a McDonald's sandwich or an extra large smoothie or something like that. May have been a nice smile or a firm handshake or maybe a glossy business card,
I'll leave that to you.
Or a cardinal schedule or whatever it may have been that I was told by the marketing experts would be the trick. This is what you do. This is how you do it. And I had many meetings with different people, and personalities got along. And, I'll give you a referral, you give me a referral, and thumbs up. And but anybody come up with anything different? And it's pretty much the system. We're all good at what we do, and we all just give referrals to each other. And maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. So for years, I've been looking for something to be different and differentiate myself. And I thought, hey, it'd be a great idea if I could figure out a way to help the people that are helping me make more money in their profession, be more successful. So I thought, let's build a team. Let's work this. And I met Bryan, and I said, I've been trying to come up with something. He said, what? I don't really know, but this is what I got so far. And then Bryan says, well, let's talk about it. And he exposed me to the real estate agent business in a much higher level than I'd ever heard before. Assigned me a project and says, find out how to lead generate. Find out what real estate agents do to find their clients. Doesn't matter how good they are at converting a client if they never get one in the first place. Okay, sounds like a good project. If I could show real estate agents how to lead generate better and more efficiently and less costly than we ever have in the past, I think that would have some value. Great, let me do that. So I got a hold of 20 of my favorite real estate agents and asked them, give me your best input. What have you got? What do you guys do to be successful? Compiled it, brought it all together, met with Bryan, and within an hour I found out that he had many, many, many more ideas that were better than what I had compiled. So I put my system aside and said, let's start working on yours. Bring this together. And we did that. I was working with one real estate agent, and after a couple months, he says, I got a comment for you. Tell me. Well, I've been with a pretty big company, and in 2 years, they haven't taught me or helped me as much as you have in 2 months. And you're an insurance agent who has never done anything in the real estate business, never got any certifications, any of that type of thing. Did you say you worked somewhere for 2 years and been to weekly meetings and phone duty and open houses and all this type of thing? Been to many seminars, and insurance broker has helped you in your real estate career more than anybody ever in the real estate business? Yeah, that's what I said. Right? Well, needless to say, every time he sells a house or has a buyer buy a house, somehow I end up with the insurance business on that. And that's how the bridge program has helped me. I've never asked him for a deal, but he's always fine. By the way, this guy's fine. About a month, 2 months. Take care of him for me, would you? And that's kind of how it works. It's been a great system, and very, very appreciative of Bryan and him sharing his system with me, and look forward to hearing your feedback on the results from the meeting. So,
without further ado, here's Bryan Kelsey.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen. Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks for making it out here. We started late, so good news we're going to stay late. No, we'll get out of here. The lead generation, back in the 1980s when I started out as a realtor at a company called Gundaker. Anybody heard of Gundaker? Right, back in those days. I went to my broker. I was a computer programmer before I was a realtor. And as a computer programmer, everything we had to do was right. 0 defects was pretty much the policy. And when you start getting into lead generation, it isn't even close to 0 defects. It's a lot of mistakes, isn't it? A lot of mistakes. So I went to my broker named Joe. Joe Morton was a Gundaker manager back in the 80s in the De Pere office. And I was desperate. I had no money coming in. I went to Joe and I said to Joe, how do I get business, Joe? And he said, I'll never forget this conversation because he said, it's a numbers game. Have you ever heard that from a broker, from yourself, whatever the case? It's a numbers game. So his recommendation was just go out and see more FSBOs, take more phone duty, and contact more of your friends. Right? Those are kind of a business plan. And I think a lot of us are not getting enough business from our sphere of influence. Would that be accurate? That they're not sending business hand over fist. So we then have to go back into the prospecting mode. We're going to talk about this today, that I think we should only be prospecting for 6 to 24 months of our career and never return to prospecting again. I know the philosophy is we should prospect, what, every day for, what is it, an hour or 2? 3, I hear 3. Anybody higher? But isn't that what we hear, that we should be prospecting for pretty much every day? And what we're going to talk about today will help hopefully eliminate the need for prospecting in your career ever again. Can I hear an amen? Amen. All right. So Joe tells me I've got to go back out and do more phone duty, FSBOs, and contact more of my friends. And I thought that wasn't good enough advice for me. Well, he also gave me this, 2 thumbs up, go get them. I'm in my 20s at the time. I'm not making any money. I'm desperate for a check. That's not what I wanted to hear. I wanted to be equipped, kind of like what Dan and Steve were just saying. In a short period of time, with our system, we were able to equip these gentlemen. And I appreciate Dan's story, that I equipped him, and now what he's doing is he's equipping realtors. Steve's doing the same thing. And the So I went to Caroline in the office. Caroline was the top producer back in the 1980s in our office, and I went to Caroline and said, Caroline, I need your help. I'm desperate. So I, approached the queen of the office, if you will, the top producer. I'm nobody producing nothing. And I said to her, can you help me out? And she said, Bryan, it's a crapshoot. So it went from a numbers game to a crapshoot. And this wasn't the advice I was looking for. She said, you just got to see more people, Bryan. You got to hang in there. Take more opportunities. What I wanted to do was be equipped. I didn't want a rah-rah meeting. Show me what I'm supposed to do. And equip me. Somebody equip me with what I'm supposed to do. I was already doing FSBOs. I was just failing at FSBOs. So today we're going to, really life's a numbers game. Does everybody agree with that? That we've all heard that life's a numbers game? And if you will, life begins as a numbers game. When we look at, when my son was born 17 years ago, I carried him. Patty had the baby. I take Benjamin to the scale, and the nurse takes him out of the blanket and weighs the baby. Is it important what the baby weighs in the beginning? Numbers matter. What do people want to know when the baby's born? Not just what the sex of the baby is, but also they want to know, what's the baby weigh? Isn't that always the question? Ben weighed 9 pounds, 2 ounces. If you ever had a child, you probably know how much your baby weighed. Okay? It's important to weigh the baby. What's important about 2 weeks later? We got to weigh the baby again. The beginning of our real estate business, whatever the field we're in, we always need to weigh the baby. And quite often, I find that people only weigh the baby about once a year. What we're going to talk about today is really weighing that baby every 30 days. It's like an airplane heading from St. Louis to California. Is there ever a course correction? It's a non-stop course correction. And quite often, I see salespeople about twice a year. They weigh the baby, and they're way off course. So today, hopefully, we'll have a business model for you that'll help you really stay on course. Now, I don't know if you know this about babies, but when they're born, for the first minute, if you look at the bottom of their feet, it tells you what the profession's going to be. Anybody? My parents were so excited. Mine said salesman. Because who would have thought, any of us here that are realtors, if you will, that that's what we were going to be when we were born. But here we are. But it's a numbers game. And as if you will, as we grow up, and all of a sudden we're in school, like this teenager in this picture, and at the back of his shirt says future salesperson. We don't really see it on there, but do you know how many future salespeople are right now in high school or college? Getting a 4-year degree, and then we're going to become lenders, realtors, really finding our way in life. Hopefully this is finding your way where you are today. So the question is, when the baby is growing up, those first few years, who's responsible for equipping the child? And secondly, refining the mind. It's all the parent's responsibility. My son's 17, he's absolutely now he has to do his part. Do his part doing what? Refining the mind. And too often we get equipped to call on FSBOs or whatever we're doing in our fields. And so we looked at the company for equipping us, and hopefully that's what you hear today. You volunteer to equip yourself. But in addition to what we're going to talk about is refining of the mind. It's too easy to get off track as independent contractors in sales. There's too many distractions. There's too much, maybe I'll quit. And what we're hoping to do today is look at not just equipping you, but refining. Because as a student, the teachers are the equippers, right? The parents are still the equippers. But what's interesting is we become an adult. I find that most people read less books now than they did when they were in school. So why do we pull back from equipping ourselves and refining our mind? Because it's a choice. We have the choice to not do these things. Because does my son have a choice to not read his books? Yes, so. But that would be a bad idea. So as we look at equipping and refining materials, hopefully today we're going to cover that for you. And of course, life is still a numbers game. How many sales calls are you doing? How many closings are you getting? What's your success rate? It's all about numbers, isn't it? Everything's about numbers games. Relationships, how many do you have? Are the relationships productive? And now the burden of responsibility is really left upon our shoulders, our own, to equip ourselves and refine. Sure, the management has systems for us at all of our companies, but we also have to look at it. We're all the CEO of our own companies. You might be an independent contractor someplace, but it is incumbent upon each of us to say that we're really the CEO of our own organization, which means we need to sometimes seek outside mentorship, outside coaching, and if you look at all the athletes at the highest level or business people, there's always a coach or mentor present. And it's not one day I'll get that. That's how they got to where they are today. And so I want to ask you to do your part. The part is an acronym. All right? Get your pens ready. I'm the acronym guy. All right? Aren't I, Liz? I'm going to ask you to do your part. P stands, simply it's a plan. We have to have a plan. The A is the activity or the actions. The R, we have to stop and review. And T is tweak. So the question is, how often should we review the numbers? If life is a numbers game, how often should we review the numbers? My thought is every 30 days. At a maximum, course correction. To be looking at that presents an awareness to us that we potentially need to change. But isn't change difficult? I don't want to change. I'm complacent. I'm happy where I'm at. There's a lot of, the children can't. They must change. We become adults, we now say, maybe I will, maybe I won't. And there's a lot of maybe I won'ts, because it's now an option. I want you to think about this for a second, and that is, imagine you're a young child and God gives you a certain amount of days as a child until you become an adult. Those are your equipping years and your refining years. Then we become an adult, and He gives us 10,000 seeds, which is equivalent to 10,000 days. If you start work when you're age 25 and you work till age 65, the numbers work out perfectly to 10,000 days. If you work 5 days a week, like most realtors do, or independent contractors, right? We work 5 days a week. Just stick with me on the math. So if you work 5 days a week and you work 50 weeks out of the year and you take 2 weeks off, that's 250 days. Times 40 years as an adult working, that's exactly 10,000. So I worked on that for a long time. So imagine you had 10,000 days in front of you, and there were seeds. There were seeds in your hand. And each day you spent one of those seeds. Would you throw them aimlessly all over the place? Or how would you treat those days? What I've found is that we stop equipping ourselves. We stop refining the mind. We have 10,000 tries at this. The question is, should we be debt-free at this point of our lives? I've got about 3,400 days left to my 10,000 days. Just do the math. Where are you in your days? Are you treating each day, or do you take those 2 handfuls of seeds and just drop half of them along the way and only have 5,000 days worth? But imagine you actually took each day. This is about doing our part. Having the plan, having activities that we're doing, the right activities, reviewing that all the time, and then tweaking. How often should we do the tweaking? Every 30 days. And that's a challenge for you. If I never see you again, my hope is that one of the takeaways you have from today is, I'm going to tweak my plan every 30 days. The medical industry is always changing and growing. Of course, the airline, just flying on an airline, what is it? Non-stop tweaking, changing it, getting back on course. Because if we wait too long, we can find ourselves way off course. So, as you can see here, growth is expected when we're kids, but it becomes optional as adults. In the Battle of 1812, you guys all probably remember that really well, right? It's the battle over New Orleans. And the British were coming, and obviously the boats were slow back then, but we knew they were coming. And their objective was to destroy New Orleans. That would really stop the whole revolution because of the ports that were there and the supplies that we were getting. So the leadership of the city of New Orleans was basically say we're going to do one of two things: run or surrender. That was it. We're going to give up. We will be outnumbered. The British were battle-tested, trained well, and the Americans had what? Farmers for their militia. We had no chance of winning this victory. And so that was pretty much the consensus. We're going to surrender New Orleans. And today, if that were the case, we would speak British. Well, it's the same as we have. I speak a lot of languages. I'm Canadian, Jamaican, Irie. So there was enough time there to get General Andrew Jackson there. And General Andrew Jackson said, "We will never surrender." We can think of Churchill and "we will never surrender," that speech. And he essentially took the same men into the same battle against the same enemy. We lost 13 Americans, and the British lost hundreds and hundreds. It was just a change in leadership. It was to doing what? A change in mindset. Jackson's objective was, I've got to train these people that don't know how to do this. He had about 2 months to train them, and then secondly, he had 2 months to work on the mindset. And here we are today. We forget the people that go before us and do this, that completely change the mindset of the country. And that's really what our objective is with this organization. It's changing mindsets, equipping people, and to say that as long as we all do our part, I'll do my part. Everybody does their part here. And to say, you know, maybe today there's some tweaking going on, there's some changes to make. I know there's a lot of resistance to change, isn't that right? I'm not going to change. I'm an adult. I like me the way I'm at. I'm in my familiar zone, which is another word for our comfort zone. We get in our comfort zone and we see there's no need for change. I know this, as a child going through school, that's not acceptable. But we do that. So I'm hoping today that that's what we cover, that you come here with a completely open mind, because I know prospecting is a highly recommended thing to do. And my opinion on prospecting is only do it when it's necessary. If it's necessary every day that we're prospecting, we're doing something wrong. To be in this business for more than 2 years and still prospecting, something went wrong in our lead generation. All right, everybody with me on that? All right. So dreams, we all have dreams, we have goals, we call them that. They require 3 things, and that's time and effort, but being equipped for the skills. Like when Joe was my manager, I said, Joe, I'm desperate here. And I got 2 thumbs up and encouragement. I needed more than that. Being equipped, we're going to cover a lot of that today, but also refining of the mind, because they're really 2 separate things. Okay. If you ever Googled Winston Churchill, and now you were around, Jim, when Churchill was, it's my bald friend. But he talks about different kinds of people. And from listening to his speeches and reading his materials, and if you've ever been out to Westminster in Fulton, Missouri, there's a lot of information there about Winston Churchill. And he talks about different kinds of people. And I put those words into, we have flatlanders, people that are focused, people that are forward thinkers. And I would say for the first 7 years of my career, which started in 1985, I was a flatlander. And we're going to unpack what that means here in a moment. But I never made more than $45,000 a year as a flatlander. I became very focused. I hired a coach, went through things like that. And then eventually I met, Dr. White. Dr. White is was a cancer doctor at BJC hospitals. And he actually was a psychiatrist, helping people work through this thing this catastrophic thing that their life is, and through the depression. But I had a good fortune to list Dr. White's house in Chesterfield off of Debenham, and I didn't sell it. It's one of those, I was still learning. But Dr. White used to take a lot of walks, and I met him one time at Babbler State Park, and I took a walk with him. It was a great opportunity. Dr. White also was a psychology coach for the Billikens, St. Louis Billikens basketball team. And he never played basketball. That wasn't important. But what he could do, he only worked on the mindset, not the skill. And the Billikens were consistently losing games by 3 to 5 points. You know where they were losing those games? At the free throw line. Everybody knows what basketball is, right? Right? You stand there, nobody's bothering you, just drop back. I made 19 in a row once. Yeah. In high school. I was 5 foot tall and shortest guy on the team. I was on the B squad. But there's nobody bugging you. But the Billikens were not making enough out of free throws, and they're losing games. So they brought in a sports psychology coach to work on the mindset. And in order to get to what I would call a forward thinker, we need these other people in our lives that can help us reframe shooting a free throw. The belief systems were all he shifted. It wasn't rah-rah, you could do it, Jim, you could do it, you could do it. It's what's going on in the mind during the process of shooting a free throw, and you're missing it. When we take a look at our business that's in front of us, how many of these things were layups or free throws? Relationships that we didn't recognize. And so we're really going to unpack that today. How do we all, maybe we all are right now, are forward thinkers? I'm going to show you some slides here, and you can decide where you're at. Are you a flatlander? Are you focused? Forward thinker? I moved from forward thinker to focused and back, never again to return to flatlander. So let's take a look at what those are. And, you know, we all hear the 80-20 rule, right? The 80-20 rule in sales. 80% of the business is done by 20% of the people. So a flatlander essentially says that, my screen's in front of me, and the print is small. 80%, and then the forward thinkers are really the 5%. And then we have, as this kind of lady looks on, flatlanders pretty much practice a year at a time. And it's a restart. I don't know if anybody in here identifies with that. You don't have to raise your hand, but if you're in the room. Forward thinkers are pretty much at least 3 years out. And Dr. White was one of my first mentors. And again, helping people with cancer, he had to get them to think long term because their focus was short term, the distress that they were in, the family that they have to take care of. Additionally, flatlanders are really prospecting all the time. Focused people, it's still part of their day-to-day business, or it's less frequent. But the forward thinker has found a way to eliminate prospecting altogether. Because isn't prospecting, you're in the chase mode? And chase mode is a weak position. We want to be in a position where everything's flowing toward us, that we're not chasing anything. We're being invited to the table to get the business. Additionally, flatlanders, I hope they're not here today, but they really don't have any time for self-development. I don't have any time for it. I don't have the money for it. I got enough money to watch cable TV, but I don't have enough money to invest in myself. It's just priorities. All it is comes down to, is it enough time, or is are the priorities in the wrong order? The last couple things here. The flatlanders tend to be more fire starters. You ever done a real estate transaction? The other realtor, not you guys, but the other realtor is a fire starter. It's always a problem, day before closing or whatever it is. And as we move toward forward thinking, really those people are fire preventers because what? They're taking responsibility for the whole transaction. A fire preventer could be the lender. Somebody's got to lead the transaction. I like what Dan had to say when he was up here, Dan Lewigs, that he is now equipping people in a different industry because he, like Steve, is a forward thinker, and it's not about his business, it's about your business. And that's where the forward thinkers start saying, and all of you today, we're going to get in that mindset. We're not really here just to equip ourselves, but to equip other people that we want to get business from. Okay? And then lastly, quality is extremely important. And this afternoon, what we're going to talk about is quality standards. Now, it's called lead conversion, but lead conversion has a lot to do with lead selection. And so often, I'm going to show a major franchise in St. Louis this afternoon. I'll show you their numbers. I won't tell you their name, though. It's one particular office. And they lost about 48% of the units they had listed. Now, what's a listing? A relationship. So when you lose a listing, what do you lose? A relationship. And where does it go? I've got a software program that actually tracks every single listing in this metro area. Who had it first? Who got it second? Who gets it third? Who gets the price reductions? And who gets the check? It's right in the MLS. All I have to do is export this. I can find out every listing an agent had for their whole career back to 1998. You'd be amazed at how much money those agents lost in a relationship they already controlled. Controlled meaning I have an employment agreement with you, and it didn't work. It shows up as somebody else's listing, which that means the seller becomes a buyer, goes with somebody else. And all the referral leads, do they come back to you on an expired listing, or do they go to the new agent with a new relationship? I can't hear you guys. Yeah, the new one. So what's at stake in losing these relationships? We're talking some offices, $50,000 to $100,000 per month. All you have to do is look at expired withdrawals and canceled, and you can see that how much business was lost. Yeah, they might have closed this much business, but they lost just about the same. Doesn't really matter which franchise it is or the independents, it's almost always the same. It's 50-something, 40-something, maybe the low 60s. What's the standard we should set? For how many listings out of 10, relationships out of 10, we fail at? What's acceptable? 0, I heard 0. We want to go 10 out of 10. But in reality, why is it so low? There are offices that close 3 out of every 10 transactions. It's in the MLS. All you do is, excuse me, is pull up the MLS, run an office ID, and then run the closed listings against the non-closed listings. It is amazing. These aren't listings, they're relationships. They're our future. So this afternoon we're going to talk a lot about quality and how to put quality into our communication to continue to hang on to these relationships. Otherwise we have to do what? Prospect. And go back to that. So lastly, the flat lender, I need better glasses. Or Yuri at the break, we got to move this thing up a little closer. You guys all move back a little bit. But a flat lender, unfortunately, says, I don't know how to do this. This business, whatever it is, we're in insurance or loan officers, whatever it is, I really don't know how to do this business. The forward thinker says that this is doable, what we're talking about, especially what we're going to unpack today. This is very doable unless you're not willing to change. Or my idea is horrible. But it isn't. And then we talked about this excellence as a standard. I remember going backwards here. Okay. So what I want to do now is kind of shift gears and start identifying what the best lead sources are. And for some of these things that we do, Bob Newhart has a Bob Newhart, remember that comedian? And from the Newhart Show and all that. He has a therapy session on Saturday Night Live as a skit. And it's basically, it's called 5-minute therapy. And he comes in, he listens to the person talk, and then he somewhat abruptly says, okay, I have just some advice for you. And you're ready, you got a pen, write this down. So the person, is getting ready to write down. After they told her all the problems, he says, okay, I got one piece of advice. Stop it! He said, just stop it. And she goes, but I've got these other things. He said, stop it! And she says, well, my husband's like this and that. And he says, stop it! That was it. And it was the counseling session. And so many things that we do, we just have to stop. And this will go against the grain for some of you today, that I'm going to say, stop it. Because lead generation and business building is a lot about stop doing the wrong things. And when I was working with Dr. White, he wasn't really a seller to me, he was a mentor. And I was fortunate that he took the time as a seller to, his house was a disaster. I just didn't price it according to the condition of the house, but I was able to find a friend and find a mentor. And what I teach a lot about is what Dr. White shared with me. And the ideas came from, most of it was the mindset, because he knew nothing about real estate. So identifying it, I was a manager for a Prudential office here in St. Louis in the early 1990s. And it was an incredible opportunity to sit in another seat. As a realtor, I was focused on me and what I was trying to build. But when I sat in the chair of the manager for about 14 months, I hated the paperwork, and I wanted to lead people. And I found myself always doing paperwork, which is why I lasted 14 months doing it.